insight is very much of value. We now move on. We stay in Europe, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has met Pope Leo XIV in Rome on Wednesday, their second private meeting since the American-born pontiff took office in May. The Vatican said both sides discussed the urgent need for a just and lasting peace, while Zelensky thanked the Holy See for helping recover Ukrainian children allegedly abducted to Russia. Zelensky also backed the Vatican's offer to host future peace talks with Russia, an idea Moscow has previously rejected. The meeting took place at the Pope's summer residence in Castel Gandolfo, just south of Rome. Zelensky later met US envoy Keith Kellogg, President Trump's representative for Ukraine and Russia, ahead of the Ukraine Recovery Conference this week in the Italian capital. The conference aims to mobilize global support, including private investment, for rebuilding war-torn Ukraine. US support for Kyiv has stalled under President Trump, but this week he pledged to resume arms deliveries and called Russian President Vladimir Putin's narrative on Ukraine lies. Zelensky said Ukraine wants peace and called on the Vatican to help host a summit to end the war. We're now joined by our guest, Ruben Johnson, who's the director of the Asia Research Center at the Casimir Pulaski Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us, Ruben. I want to get into this by starting to say that the Vatican is kind of seen as apolitical in a way. We've seen previous popes meet with Russian and Ukrainian officials alike, officials all over the world. How much real influence does the Vatican have bringing Russia to the table, given Moscow's repeated rejection in these circumstances?
Well, by the way, thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah, the Vatican doesn't have the clout that they should have, but that is entirely Russia's fault, because I believe I've talked about this before on this same program, that the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, has said, well, it's inappropriate for the Vatican to be an intermediary in this matter, because it's the Catholic Church, and Russia and Ukraine are both Orthodox nations. So once again, the Russians playing their age-old game of trying to figure out ways to divide people, trying to find fault lines. And he's made this a religious issue rather than one of the Vatican always working on behalf of peace.
Ruben, what are your views on how Vladimir Putin has approached these peace talks? Rejecting a Vatican ceasefire negotiation is... Why would Vladimir Putin do something like that, especially since he has says that Moscow wants peace since the Trump administration has taken charge? In reality, when we look at it, what are your thoughts?
Well, peace is a very vague term. There's peace in a prison camp. There's peace in a graveyard. There's peace on a battlefield when everyone is dead. That's Vladimir Putin's version of peace. He's never really wanted peace. His conditions never change. They are all very maximalist. They amount to unilateral disarmament and under unconditional surrender on the part of the Ukrainians. He demands the Ukrainians get rid of all their weapons. They destroy all of their fortifications, that they are no longer to receive deliveries of weapons from abroad. Their soldiers are no longer to be trained abroad. They are to reduce the size of it's ridiculous. It's not, these are not serious offers by a serious country. So, if Vladimir Putin ever comes up with a set of proposals that are actually reasonable and negotiable, I'll let you know, but I haven't seen it yet, and I don't expect to see it because of the nature of the kind of person that he is.
Yes, and Ruben, this week we've seen Donald Trump resume arms deliveries to Ukraine after some halting on the Americans' behalf. Alongside this push for Vatican-led talks, what does this say about Washington's shifting approach to this conflict?
this comes down to a very simple dynamic here. There are groups of people within the U.S. defense and foreign policy apparatus, and they actually believe that the United States should not be involved in Europe, and that the United States needs to focus all of its energies on the Pacific theater to defend Taiwan against China, and that the Europeans should be involved in taking care of Europe, and never the twain shall meet. And there have been actually points where I've had people who I thought of as quite intelligent, and when speaking about any other subject, I always felt that they were quite perceptive. But they've even suggested before the war began that maybe Ukraine could just be given away to Russia, and that would cause Russia to settle down, and they wouldn't want anything else, and we would disengage from Russia as a problem, and we could focus all our energies on China. And this goes on, and this I don't understand the complete fallacy of the argument. Why anyone would make this argument that somehow what happens in Ukraine has no relevance to what would happen to Taiwan and vice versa. These things are all linked. All of this stuff is linked. That's what linkage is all about. Anybody who's had Foreign Policy 101 knows what linkage means. But there are some people in Washington that seem to have forgotten.
Reuben Johnson, thank you very much for joining us. You are staying with us to discuss